The day Bobby Earl Cutter turned 17, he ran a mile in 4 minutes and 38 seconds across the red clay fields of Harlan County, Tennessee, and everyone in town knew it before supper. He was the kind of fast that made old men stop chewing their tobacco and young women forget what they were saying. When Bobby Earl ran, his feet barely kissed the ground. It was like watching a creek run downhill. Effortless, inevitable, beautiful. His father, a quiet man named Douglas, who grew soybeans and spoke in short sentences, watched from the porch that evening as his son sprinted laps around the property just because he could. "You're going to burn out that engine," Douglas said. "Daddy, I got more engine than anybody in 3 counties, Bobby Earl grinned. Douglas just nodded, slow and low, the way men do when they've seen something before that the young haven't. Harlan County in the 1970s was a patchwork of tobacco fields, small farms, and the kind of red dirt roads that coated your boots by noon. The nearest city was 2 hours away, which meant that local boys had 2 options for greatness: farming or sports. Bobby Earl had chosen both, though deep down everyone knew his heart was on the track. By his senior year of high school, Bobby Earl had collected more trophies than his mother had shelf space. State champion, regional record holder, a write-up in the Knoxville Sentinel that called him a generational talent. College scouts drove down those red dirt roads with clipboards and checkbooks. There was another boy in town, a lanky, awkward kid named Elias Munroe, who lived 3 farms over and ran like a newborn foal finding its legs. Elias had none of Bobby Earl's natural grace. His arms flailed, his stride was too long, he breathed like an old screen door in a storm. Nobody paid much attention to Elias. Why would they? He was average in the way that country roads are average, unremarkable to those who don't walk them slowly. But Elias was doing something Bobby Earl wasn't. He was studying himself. Every single day, Elias wrote in that notebook. Not poems, not diary entries, numbers and observations. Today, my left knee collapsed inward at the 600-meter mark. Today, I faded in the final 200 because I went out too hard. Today, I felt strong. Why? I slept 8 hours. I ate oatmeal. I didn't rush my warm-up. He was building a map, not of land, but of himself. His father, a tobacco farmer named Herbert, who had the patience of old furniture, used to tell him, "Boy, you can't rush a tobacco leaf. You plant it right, you tend it right, you wait. You try to hurry it, and you get nothing but a dead plant and a broken back." Elias didn't know it then, but his father was teaching him the most important lesson of his life. Meanwhile, Bobby Earl was winning everything. He went to the University of Tennessee on a full scholarship, and in his freshman year he broke 2 school records. The newspaper called him the next great American miler. He was photographed in the university's track uniform. He talked about the Olympics the way most boys talked about Christmas, with absolute glittering certainty. "The thing about being the fastest in the room," Bobby Earl told a reporter, "is that there's always another room." He meant it as confidence. It would turn out to be prophecy. Elias, meanwhile, had not gotten a scholarship. He'd enrolled at the same university by working summers baling hay and saving every dollar. He'd joined the track team as a walk-on, which is a polite way of saying he wasn't supposed to be there. The coach let him train, but gave him no uniform, no locker, no expectations. Elias kept his notebook. He studied the other runners. He noticed things. He noticed, for instance, that Bobby Earl never stretched, that Bobby Earl trained at full speed every single day, never easy, never slow, that Bobby Earl stayed out late on weekends because he figured his talent would carry him through anything. Elias went to bed at 10 o'clock every night. It started with Bobby Earl's left hamstring in the winter of his sophomore year. Just a twinge, he said, a small pull, nothing. He ran through it the way he'd always run through everything, straight ahead, full speed, no hesitation. By spring, the twinge had become a tear. He missed the conference championship, then the national qualifier. He came back too soon. Everyone told him not to, but the fastest boy in 3 counties did not take well to being told what he couldn't do, and re-injured it worse in a meet in Atlanta. He sat in the bleachers with an ice pack and watched his teammate, a boy from Cincinnati, run the mile he was supposed to run. He watched Elias Munroe, awkward, notebook-carrying, 10 o'clock bedtime Elias, run the 1,500 meters in a time that would have made Bobby Earl's freshman self raise an eyebrow. Bobby Earl chewed on that for a long time. He recovered from the hamstring eventually, but something had shifted. He wasn't quite as fast, and now, for the first time in his life, he was facing something his speed had never prepared him for: the long, humbling arithmetic of effort over time. That summer, both men went home to Harlan County, Bobby Earl to his father's soybean farm, Elias to his father's tobacco fields. There is a particular kind of peace in a Tennessee summer evening, the fireflies coming on just after the light goes amber, the smell of cut grass and something sweet you can't name, the chorus of frogs from the creek, the distant sound of a screen door. It is the kind of peace that asks you questions if you sit still long enough. Bobby Earl sat still for the first time in years. He helped his father with the soybeans, got up early, worked slow, got his hands dirty, watched his father walk the fields, not rushing, just checking, adjusting, observing. His father didn't stomp through the crops. He moved through them the way a man moves through a church, with attention, with care, with the understanding that what he was tending had its own time and its own needs. "Daddy," Bobby Earl said one evening, leaning on a fence post at dusk, "did you always know you wanted to farm?" Douglas looked out at his fields for a long moment. "I always knew I'd stay. Wanting and staying are 2 different things. Staying is harder. Staying takes patience, but staying is where the real life happens." Bobby Earl looked at his father, at his calloused hands, at the quiet authority in his face, at the way he stood in his own land like he'd grown from it, and something in him opened up that speed had always kept shut. The fields don't care how fast you ran in high school. They only care what you do tomorrow morning. 3 farms over, Elias Munroe was doing the same thing he always did in summer. He was building the slow architecture of himself. He added a new chapter to his notebook, this one about his breath, about how he'd noticed that when he breathed in a 3-step pattern instead of 2, his core stayed stable longer. He ran easy miles in the morning heat, not fast miles, just easy ones. He helped his father with the tobacco and listened to Herbert talk about patience the way a preacher talks about grace, not as an absence of action, but a full and disciplined presence. "You know why people say God is patient?" Elias asked, shading his eyes against the afternoon sun. "Why?" "Because he's got the longest view," Herbert said. "The longer your view, the more patient you can be. Short-sighted people are always in a hurry because they can only see what's right in front of them."
The 1970s moved on. Bobby Earl returned for his junior year with a hunger that was different now, sharper, more deliberate. He began to stretch. He began to sleep. He had a long conversation with Elias one October afternoon on a dirt path near the practice field, and for the first time he asked Elias to show him the notebook. He read it for an hour, standing there in the cool and air, turning pages slowly. "You've been doing this for years?" Bobby Earl said. "Since we were juniors in high school," Elias said. Bobby Earl didn't say anything for a moment. He was doing the math. He was calculating how many races he'd run on pure talent and how many Elias had run on compound interest, the slow, daily, invisible accumulation of small right choices that nobody sees until one day they do. He graduated. Elias graduated. Neither made the Olympics. The world is full of boys who were the fastest in 3 counties but couldn't outrun the gap between talent and the very top of the world. But their lives after the track are where this story really lives. Bobby Earl became a high school track coach. He went back to Harlan County because his father was getting old and the land needed tending. He coached for 32 years. He became, slowly, painstakingly, beautifully, one of the finest coaches in the state of Tennessee. Not because he lectured his athletes about hard work, but because he had lived both sides of the lesson himself, and he could recognize in a 16-year-old sprinter the exact moment when talent stops being enough. He kept a sign above the locker room door. It said, "Your gift got you here. Your character decides where here becomes." Elias became a physician, a sports medicine doctor eventually, which surprised exactly nobody who'd read his notebook. He practiced in Knoxville and drove back to Harlan County on weekends for years, first to see his father, then to tend the tobacco farm after Herbert passed, then simply because the land was his, and the land had given him something he couldn't name but couldn't leave. He still ran. Even in his 50s, he ran. Not fast, not competitively, just steadily, patiently through the red clay roads and the hills and the amber evening light, his breath even, his stride still a little awkward, his heart, that old, faithful, trained heart, steady as a metronome. There is a moment every summer in Harlan County. The old-timers call it the heavy hour, somewhere around 6 in the evening when the heat starts to lift just barely, and the light turns to something between gold and copper, and the shadows of the trees stretch long across the fields, and the air smells like warm earth and cut tobacco and the memory of rain. In the summer of 2004, 2 men in their early 50s sat on the porch of Douglas Cutter's old farmhouse. Douglas had been gone 4 years by then, and Bobby Earl had inherited the porch along with the land. Elias had walked over from his own farm, the way he'd done hundreds of times over the decades, carrying nothing but himself and the easy authority of a man who had learned, slowly and deliberately, how to be comfortable in his own skin. They sat and didn't talk for a long time, which is the kind of thing that only very old friends can do, sit together in genuine silence that feels like conversation. "You know what I think about?" Bobby Earl said finally, watching a hawk circle over the soybean field. "I think about all those mornings I could have run easy and didn't. All those nights I could have slept 8 hours and didn't. All those times I was in such a hurry to be great that I forgot to be good." Elias picked a splinter from the armrest of his chair. "You were great," he said simply. "That was real. I used to watch you run and think, I will never ever move like that, not if I live to 100. "But you're still running," Bobby Earl said. "I'm still running," Elias agreed.
This is a story about running, but it was never really about running. Bobby Earl and Elias are not unusual men. In every county, in every field, in every office and classroom and kitchen in America, there are Bobby Earls, people so gifted, so naturally capable, so fast out of the gate that they never learn the deeper law. The law that says the race that matters most is not the one where you reach the front first. It's the one you're still running when everyone else has stopped. The fastest runners often lose the longest race, not because speed is a curse. Bobby Earl's speed was real and beautiful and mattered, but because speed, untethered from patience, becomes a debt. You borrow against the future. You spend tomorrow's energy today. And the body, like a farm, like a field, like every living thing, will eventually show you the ledger. Patience is not slowness. This is the lie we've been sold,
and it has damaged a great many people. Patience is not sitting still. Patience is not hesitation dressed up in wisdom. Patience is the understanding that the best things are built in layers, in the daily, invisible work that seems to add up to nothing until one day it adds up to everything. It's the tobacco farmer checking his seedlings every morning, not once, not twice, but every single day without fail, adjusting what can be adjusted, accepting what cannot, trusting the compound math of consistent care. It's Elias and his notebook, not because he was smarter than Bobby Earl, but because he had nothing else to rely on. When you don't have natural gifts, you build systems, you build habits, you build the long, unglamorous infrastructure of a sustainable life. And here is the profound irony. Those systems outlast the gifts. Because gifts can be injured, gifts can fade, gifts can be outgrown, outcompeted, overtaken by the next generation of faster, newer, brighter gifts. But a man who has learned patience, a woman who knows how to tend the slow work, they do not fade, they deepen. They become, in the end, like those old oak trees along the red clay roads of Harlan County, Tennessee. Not the fastest things in the field, but the ones still standing when every season has come and gone 100 times. If you were young and fast right now, if everything comes easy and the world applauds your speed, this story is not a warning, it's an invitation. Learn patience while your gifts are at their peak. Let the gift and the discipline grow together. Let what you're naturally good at be the foundation, not the ceiling. If you are somewhere in the middle of your race, neither the prodigy nor the tortoise, just a human being trying to cover the distance with whatever you were given, know this: the mile you run today, the invisible mile, the unclocked mile, the one where nobody's watching and nobody's keeping time, that mile counts. It always counted. It just didn't make the newspaper. And if you are one of those people who've been running a long time and haven't won what you set out to win, if you look around and the Bobby Earls of your world got the scholarships, the headlines, the early glory, don't you dare stop running, because the race is not what you thought it was. It was never a sprint. It was always a life. Plant the seed in the dark, tend it in the rain, harvest it in your own good time. The field doesn't know your deadline. It only knows your hands.